So welcome. This is a very unique thing in that I have not done a one-off session yet, but you've seen enough of the other mentoring sessions. You know how this goes. I'd like you to sort of lead what you want the start of this to be because I'm only seeing this document for the first time. So yeah, why don't you get started? What do you want to focus on?
Um, yeah, just kind of some background. I do independent consulting, and that kind of ranges from pretty much anything. I kind of market myself as a jack of all trades kind of person to mainly small and medium-sized businesses and just kind of help them with whatever they need. And so that ranges from everything from, setting up and managing hardware infrastructure, servers, to uh, programming the variety of whatever anybody needs, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I I have one project that I'm working on right now, and basically it's in a sense a startup, and I'm working on building out their MVP, and pretty much all of that has been done by me. There's also some designers that are helping supplement some of that work, and it's looking like in the future there's going to be a team built around me. And I don't have any experience with managing a team or having other people underneath me. I do have experience with working with other teams, in that kind of contact, but nothing with someone reporting directly to me. And I just don't know how I feel about that. And I don't know how to really handle that and feel confident about it, I guess you could say is a big part of that.
Yeah. So I think this is good. I think this is a good thing to have a one-off session about, although I do also see the value in having a full mentoring series. But let's start with the one session. So I look at this as there are two types of leadership, and it's not like one's better than the other one, but there's managing people and then there's managing sort of the tech, the project side of things. Do you know what kind of management it would be?
So pretty much both is what it would be. I would say with a lot of this, it's pretty much been, I have a lot of say in how things go, pretty much a lot of decision making already that I get to have, and that my opinion is very trusted in that regard. So a lot of it is also making technical decisions and kind of the direction of how things will go. So even though I'm contracted, it's almost like a partnership, I guess you could say too, but I'm also free to, continue doing my additional work with other individuals that I do too at the same time. But then there would also be additional people, developers, and kind of general helpers, I guess you could say, that would also be reporting to me as well.
Okay. So let's say you got a team of superstars. These are the best developers, designers, whatever role you have, and they're also your best friends. So there's like no technical concerns, there's no people concerns. Would you have any concerns about management still? Would it be more like, I don't know how to divvy up tasks to them? Or are you concerned more about what is this group of people? Where is the nervousness coming from exactly?
So I do a lot of projects too, just on the side, just for hobby projects, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
And some of them have done very well, and other people want to help and contribute. And I kind of have this fear of, like, well, for one, I think one that we all can relate to is what somebody else going to think about my code,
Yeah.
and um, worrying about that. And then also there's the additional aspect of, in my head, I have this vision of how I want things to go. And I don't want someone, the best way to put this, I don't want someone to go a different route than what, I feel is best. I do see there are benefits of having additional perspectives, but sometimes I wonder if the benefits of having additional people help out would be negated by having to go back and correct them or fix their course some. So there's kind of that trust issue too in there.
Yeah. Let me capture that really fast. Worried about having to correct things. So have you heard that expression, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together? That's kind of how I look at this. You potentially having to teach people or correct things means that for a small enough project, you really should just be doing it yourself. But for a big enough project, there's a scope that you wouldn't be able to reach if you were just working on your own. And so the way I see this is there's you kind of roll the dice with anything. If you were to pick up a musical instrument for the first time in your life, there's a chance you're just better than everybody else when you pick it up. But for most people, that's not the case. You're an average person that follows a bell curve. I think it's the same thing when it comes to leadership. There's a chance you roll the dice, you start leading people, and it's just fantastic. People resonate with your style. You know exactly what you're doing. You feel confident. You feel valued. But probably it's going to follow that same bell curve where you're going to do some things great. You're going to do other things. There's probably something to be desired there. And it's not to say you'll always do those things worse than the average person, but it's a learning experience. You'll get better as you do it. And so, how long would this project probably last for?
So the reason for having a team is that hopefully it's going to be an ongoing, continuous thing and building over time. So right now, kind of what you're saying is right now I've been entrusted to just build out the MVP because I can move fast. I'm one of the people that can, move fast and create the things that you want. And so the team would be more so that I don't have to be so dedicated to the project itself, and they can handle a lot of the maintaining and additional feature build out over time. But the overall scope would be hopefully forever
Yeah, I see.
as
So
a
there's
successful
there's
business.
plenty
Yeah.
of work. And so how let's say that this nervousness again, let's say I could just kind of snap my fingers and people love your code, you are able to guide these people without needing to correct them too much or that you feel good doing it. Is this the kind of thing where 2 years from now you say to yourself, you know what, I'm glad I didn't need to be as dedicated on this project and that I have this team now? Is this a direction you wanted to go in essentially?
Yeah, that would be good. I think something many people can relate to is that I get the most joy out of building stuff, and the maintaining and all that is not something that I find as fulfilling.
Yeah.
It's kind of nothing as good as just having an idea and seeing it come to fruition, and then you're able to just, move on to build something else. And that's kind of why I've catered to being in consulting for so long is because I always have variety. And so that does sound good that, I would be able to kind of have less focus on this so that, I have more time back to continue working on other things that I find fulfilling in that building sense.
Okay.
And so that would be good. And I do kind of also wonder if maybe I should have the discussion at when the time really does come where this is necessary, saying that I'm not the best fit for it, and I think that would be okay. I just thinking about the future is always uncertain. So it's just who knows what'll change between now and, a few months from now.
Okay, that's true. This is the kind of thing where, you can see what I'm typing, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I put a star next to this that you just said. You wonder if you should have the conversation about not being the best fit. I've found in the past when I am essentially trying to convince someone out of something that they want me for, that it usually means that I might not want that thing for some reason. And so you mentioned some personal aspects of this. You like building stuff. You'd like to not have to maintain things. If you had a team, you'd be able to focus on what you want to focus on. You did not necessarily mention how would this feel from a people perspective? Do you like the idea of teaching? Do you like the idea of growing people?
I do. You know, I always I always try to be helpful and, give direction to other individuals. I get surprised that sometimes, some of the projects that I see, some of the projects that I've created that are more public facing that, people do, or people use that are my hobby projects. I have people coming to me like for advice and direction and all that. And I try to give the amount of time that I can to actually give them useful answers and give them some direction. So I do enjoy teaching, but I guess maybe it sounds selfish to say, but I like to do it on my own terms. So at least in those scenarios, I have the option of when I reply to them and when I choose to engage in giving them help rather than it being a responsibility. I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about that because I've not been in a position yet.
Yeah. Well, so is that what's playing into the trepidation with you saying that maybe I should talk to them about not being the best fit? Or is there something else to that?
I think it's just trying to give a good answer, but I definitely know a lot of my issues stem from lack of self-confidence, and I think with a leader, you need to have somebody that, has at least enough confidence to, give some direction. And sometimes I do feel that I have times where I'm afraid to make decisions. And so having to that be part of my job prospect, is kind of daunting in
Yeah.
that sense. But
That
but also I kind of do need to realize too that the majority of the decisions I make are actually good decisions. So it's
well,
just kind of teaching that to myself.
yeah, so I will say this. It is for sure, it's understandable that it seems daunting. At the same time, if you feel motivated to want to learn this, it's something you can do. If you feel motivated to never have to touch this, it's something you can do. So you have both paths ahead of you. If we cut out the nervousness, does one path seem better than the other? I know you said you like building things, but then you have to maintain it. But so you've seen the pros and cons of being consultant, being an individual contributor to a project. You have thoughts about what the pros and cons are of being a leader, but you haven't seen them firsthand yet. So you will have things you like. You're pretty much guaranteed to, and you're pretty much guaranteed to have things you don't like about it. And will that spread of pros and cons be better than what your current world is? And that's something that until you're in that world, you can't know for sure. You can theorize. You can probably have a pretty good idea of what you'll like and what you won't like. Um, which path to you, just at a high level, seems like something? If I said, you know what does 5 years from now Casey look like? Does he look like a manager? Does he look more like a consultant? Does he have a small team? Does he have a large team? Where do you see that going if we set aside the nervousness or hesitation about this?
Um, 5 years from now, I mean, I would say that, I'd be pretty happy um, putting more things out into the world. I don't see myself as much um, a management and kind of leadership person. I like putting things out into the world, and I guess I guess there could be room for both. I'm just not sure that's really what I want. So,
I see. Well, there are lots of different styles too of managers, and I've seen managers who code, and I've seen managers who never touch the code. And just like everything else, there are pros and cons, right? If you're a manager and you're touching code and then you're giving this to other people, you're much closer to it. You might have stronger opinions on it, and yet your job is split in terms of you're managing these people, but then you're also setting technical direction. You want to give them some freedom, but at the same time, you're touching the code. So, anyway, you could potentially carve this out. You could, as you sort of mentioned earlier, you could talk to people who are in charge of this decision and say something like, I would like to explore this. Here's what I'm looking to get out of this. How can we come to an agreement between what you're also looking for? And so I'm trying to get a gauge right now, and I know we've only been talking for something like 20 minutes. I'm trying to get a gauge, or I don't even know if it's been that long, 12 minutes, of what is it that you're resonating with. And this is one of those, you flip a coin in the air, and while it's about to land, you realize what it is you want. You kind of just said right now, 5 years from now, you want to be building things, you want to be doing things. Um, does the thought of pursuing this idea of leading a team, does it excite you at all?
I would say, in a sense, yeah. This job is actually a very unique position to me because it's also building something that I am passionate about too. So I've kind of, not that I don't put my heart and soul into the other work that I do, but I also do feel that I've done that more so with this because I do I do appreciate the the product that we're building, and I feel almost like, it's probably something I would do as a hobby project too, and,
Yeah.
love and take care of, So it does, it does seem nice to know that, not only have I been able to put this out into the world, but also maintain some control over it so that, you know, I can I can keep it filled with, what I envision it being.
Yeah. A lot of this growth that we talk about, I think it can feel uncomfortable. And you've said this word control or something, a synonym of it, at least a couple of times now. And I think it's an interesting part of this because when you're on your own, you can dictate the entire direction of a project, as you've mentioned, and you can see that project to fruition, as you've mentioned. And so you can go through all those stumbling blocks and through your own brain kind of recognize, here's what I would do in this situation. When you're dealing with a team of people, since you necessarily have to involve the team or else you could have just been on your own, you have to relinquish some of that control to some extent. And there are these different levels of delegation. The most extreme on one side being, hey, Casey, go do this thing. Don't even report back to me. Just get it done. And the other extreme being, hey, Casey, here's a thing. Okay, here's what step one is. I'm going to guide you through that. Here's what step two is. I'm going to guide you through that. There are times to use both of those, but most management is somewhere in the middle, depending on the task and depending on the person. And so it'll probably feel uncomfortable given how you've described your own feelings about this. It'll probably feel uncomfortable at first for you to relinquish some of that control and say, I'm trusting you to do this. It might turn out slightly differently from what I think. If it does, I might need to talk to you about how I expected it to turn out, whether your way might be better. It would involve some openness on your end too to saying, here's what I had planned as an idea. Maybe their way is better, or maybe parts of it are better. And so if that kind of collaboration sounds spooky from the point of view of like, okay, yeah, what he's saying, what Adam's saying right now makes sense. I might actually feel this way. This might be hard. I think that's normal. But then the question is, do you want to overcome that? Or is it something where you just think, I'd just rather have that control? I'd rather be able to say at the end, yes, this is the direction we're moving in.
So regarding that, I've kind of had some thoughts going on, and I forget which one of your mentees it was, but the whole finishing a project. I want to say it was Remy, but I could be unsure. But that last 10% is the hardest bit,
Mm-hmm.
and um, not to sound cruel, but that would be something that would be great. Is something that, those, final little task and all that. It does seem relieving to be able to have somebody else kind of be able to work on those things, and they may find it more enjoyable than I do.
Yeah.
Um, but not just pawning off work, but I do, I guess one reason why I appreciate um, you and your channel is that I think we share this kind of passion of trying to learn something, and wanting to build and improve our knowledge and all that. And that's something that I always want to do is learn more. And I guess I'm starting to see too that I kind of live in this tunnel where I just see things my way, and being able to work with more people, even if I'm supposed to be managing them to some degree, there's still things that I can gain from listening to differing opinions. So I do like that aspect of that is because, I'm more than willing to say that I don't know everything. And having somebody else that can see things differently is definitely beneficial. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I know that some of the things that I do are kind of the old way,
Yeah.
and a lot of things have changed in some regards. So being able to, get other perspectives on that does sound good, because there are things that I would like to learn. Um, like for example, Docker. I don't ever use Docker. I've never been forced to use Docker. And so maybe if somebody can propose that that's like a better idea to use for something, then I'll listen and then kind of not be forced to learn that, but not feel like I'm alone in the journey and able to see different perspectives on that. So I do see it as a good learning potential too, even as a manager.
Yeah. Yeah. I see some. some almost definites of if you were to pursue this. One is for sure there would be discomfort. And so I almost put this hand in hand with growth sometimes, or learning, is that there will be discomfort. You're stepping out of your wheelhouse, you're doing something new, and it won't be this thing that you can retreat to and say, I know how this works. I've done this a million times. I can do it in my sleep. It's going to be something new. You're going to be dealing with people. And in order for that to work, you would need to embrace that mentality of being open. And you already said you're more than willing to say that, you might be doing things in the wrong way or not the best way. That's necessary, I think, because otherwise you end up becoming the leader or the manager who's like, we're doing things this way. People say, but wait, could this be better? Could this be better? And you don't want to even hear their thoughts. So if you are to move forward with this, I would say those two things are going to be there. Uh, Knowing what I know about what you've said over Discord and everything, this part you said at the very end here, you wouldn't be alone in the journey. This resonates with me from what you've said outside of this call. And you're working as a consultant. It's not often that you are on a probably a long-term project with other people, or if it is, it's in a different capacity than working with them as a team, certainly different from managing those people. And okay, you certainly don't have to answer this, but 10 years from now, if you continued along the same way, how much would being alone in the journey get to you, or how much would it be a boon? How do you feel about that aspect in particular?
Um, I I do feel alone in the work that I do, and I don't like it, and that's, as I've mentioned before, I'm currently interviewing for a regular job, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
and part of that is also that I like the idea of working with other individuals. I mean, um, I don't really have much of a other people to bounce things off of, many like-minded people to do. And I mean, that's why I end up in, streams like yours or other places where I am around like-minded people. So I do feel that, internally I am missing that part of I guess, my social life where I don't really have other people I engage with. I'm very much, I'm closed off in that sense. And so it does seem beneficial to, have people, and I don't want to be continuing in the same path, for many years to come.
Yeah. Okay. So then this points to the need for a change and the question of whether management is that change. And you've identified that the regular job is the alternate opportunity here. Is this a clear summary then of like what I'm about to say? Is this a clear summary? You're currently in this situation and you have a fork of two paths. It is quote unquote regular job and then this management thing. Are there any other routes you're considering?
Not really. The reason I've been pursuing this other job is because it is it's almost like all my passion projects that I do, my hobby projects as a job, and doing it with other people that feel like-minded on that. So that's the main reason I've been pursuing this job. Uh, but otherwise, if I don't get the job, which is always a possibility, that I would continue on the same path that I'm going on. I don't know if I would pursue your kind of standard, like full-time job otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So if it weren't for this one specific opportunity, then that path would get cut out of quote unquote regular job. So you essentially have three paths. You have going into management, sticking on your current path that you have, and going to this unique regular job. Okay. Also, I want to take one tiny second. I don't normally do this. I know someone alerted. Tej, thank you for the raid. I am currently mentoring. I don't tend to read chat during this time. So I'm going to try to get back to this, but hi, everybody. Um, okay. So the reason I ask about this is because if you said, you know what, I only told you about two opportunities, there are actually eight other ones, then it sounds like, okay, you've got a lot of things you're considering. But it sounds like this is steering you toward be around people. And whether or not you're managing those people is a good question to ask. I want to probe a little bit more on that last thing that you said, though. If it wasn't for this specific quote unquote regular job, that you probably wouldn't be considering other full time roles. Why is that?
at least personally, I haven't found other things that or other job positions that I'd be as passionate about. And I I do fear that I wouldn't find the work fulfilling in those other cases. And I get bored easily, I guess you could say. And so unless I'm not passionate about something, that's why I've kind of ended up in the position where I do consulting, where I'm able to, take things that I find interesting and I'm typically not working on them, you know, or very focused on them for a long time. I have other ones that I continue to support here and there in various degrees, but overall, I'm able to keep things interesting, quote unquote, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So are you leaning toward one of these positions already more than the other, the management versus the regular job? I know they're both at least somewhat speculative right now, but let's say they're both in your hand. You could say, I'm just picking one of them. I have all the variables figured out. Is there one that seems better than the other right now?
Definitely the job, the regular job that I've
Okay.
been interviewing with. That would be my first pick, and I don't feel like so much on the management position that I have to choose between what I'm kind of doing currently and uh, it wouldn't strictly be management. I
Mm,
still I still do have the freedom to do both at the same time. So it's in that position to be more of do I do I either continue working on this project and stress myself out because it's going to be too much work for just one person to do, or am I going to basically relinquish myself from the project and uh, just continuing to do the other jobs that you know I do contract wise.
I see. Um, I think this is a good opportunity for you to get that team experience. So I recognize that if you were to go with the management one, that you wouldn't necessarily drop all of the other projects. And yet you might find that your time is allocated differently from what you're used to, and that you really like management, you like leadership, you everything's just gelling with you. It's possible that happens. I know you have some fears about it now. And I'm not saying that all those fears will just melt away as soon as you start. There will still be some things where you're worried about them or you don't have the validation that you need from the people you're working with. And part of that can be considered a cultural problem that you can start to address if the team is small enough. One of the things I wanted to ask a little bit earlier was, are you the one forming this team?
So I would probably be the one that would be forming the team. This this individual I'm working with, they've worked with other developers in the past, and um, they're they're most happy with me. They feel that I they appreciate my work ethic, my uh, honesty regarding things, and my input. And in the past, they felt that the previous people they've worked with on different projects just take too long,
Yeah.
I guess you could say. They're not highly efficient. So it sounds like pretty much the recommendations he would have, for people to be a part of the team are kind of already written off. So I would have to um, he may bring in additional options, but ultimately the decision would come down to me as to who would be on that team.
Okay. And does that cause you any pause at all of maybe interviewing these people or having to select the best candidates?
I Not really. I I feel like I have, at least just in my general day-to-day interactions with people, I feel like I have a pretty good intuition on kind of judge of character and what type of person somebody is. And so I think I could make a pretty good fit or pretty good decision about who would be a good fit.
Yeah.
And uh, the only thing I'm really worried about would be the actual finding the people,
Yeah.
not choosing them, but actually finding them.
Yeah, and that's something that, if you're a manager, it is your job to do that at some interval because you can't count on if you form a team of five, let's say, that those five people will stay with you for the rest of your career. So at some point, you fill in gaps, the team grows, the team shrinks. You still have all that people management to do, I guess. Um, the filtering part, I'm glad that doesn't cause any issue. The finding them, I assume you'd probably get some resources from this person to say, okay, you have time, you have some, put out advertisements or connect with your network. So I'm not, I guess, super concerned about that. Um, Going back now to, I said, which path are you more interested in? You said the regular job. So if you heard back from them tomorrow and they said, we're ready to move forward, you are going to essentially start your path to closing down some of the consulting opportunities you've been working on.
Uh, Most definitely, or most probably.
Yeah.
I don't see how I would be able to make my time work in that. Uh, I've kind of peeked a little bit at your next question, and I I feel like I work too hard already doing the stuff that I do. I pretty much find myself working 7 days a week, uh, morning to sunset. It's pretty much all I do is just work all the time. And even with that, I still do feel stressed with the amount of work that I have to accomplish. Just because there's also that kind of fear when you're doing contract work of when's it going to end? Is there going to be that gap? So it's always that race of just making sure that you're always staying busy and you have work coming in. So, uh, if I did get that position, I would uh, pretty much start working on a transitioning process of helping them, find, you know, suitable replacements, other people to continue where I leave off. I don't really see a future where I could continue at least at the same capacity that I'm doing right now and have this full-time job as well.
Yeah. I was very blunt in my mentoring session with Peter, and I think one or the first or second session. And I don't know if you'd seen this, but he'd mentioned how he was going to have something, a very large number of direct reports, and I thought it was sort of traditional management. He later clarified it wasn't, and I was like, this sounds like a red flag. I'll say the same bluntness here. Working 7 days a week, morning to sunset, sounds like a big red flag. So, I asked, hey, could you see yourself on this path 10 years from now? And you're like, okay, it's starting to get to me a little bit. I'm noticing that I don't want to continue the last 10% of a project. I don't like maintaining things. I want to build stuff. So you still have passion. I think that's really good. I think this entire conversation could precede a 1 week later post on Casey's blog. I have burned out. I am taking a break for a year. I am not going to. That could totally happen, and I can see all the signs of that. So I wrote this at the bottom here. Change is necessary, and I think we've already identified this. And it comes down to working with more people. The next thing I want to poke at here is, could this management role, not talking about the regular job, you get the management role, could that turn into full time? Could you start dropping consulting projects? Because you said you had no intention to at first, at least, but could this just turn into your full time role? So you essentially carve out the path that puts you with other people, stops you from working 7 days a week.
It definitely could. And I mean, it's all contingent on how successful the product we're building gets. Otherwise, uh, I mean, the individual that I'm working with on this, he's very happy with me, and he's even said that, if this venture doesn't work out, that he's got tons of other work he'd like to get me involved in. So, I mean, potentially just I could just be focused on that, or at least just always working with this one individual. And I mean, regarding the project I'm working on right now, I mean, uh, we've already had discussions about basically kind of equal partnership and ownership of it. So it definitely has that potential. It's just kind of the whole aspect of it being very startup compared to, a lot of the additional work that I do was pretty much for more established companies and just needing work. So I do kind of worry about some of that is, would I transition to making this full time and then 6 to 12 months down the line, be basically trying to build up my clientele again to, have work coming in if I did just make that a full-time job.
Yeah. So, I think about sort of what is my role here as someone doing a one-off mentoring session, and how much should I steer you versus give you a let you come up with the path. And so I want to do a little bit of both in different ways. You are dealing with speculative opportunities right now. We don't know if that regular job is going to come back and say, yes, we'd like to hire you. We don't know if this startup idea with this person is going to work. You have equal partnership 6 to 12 months down. It could fail. And it could be the biggest company in the world. It could be the next Minecraft for all we know. And you find out later, oh, I turned down a $250 billion contract or something. We don't know. And that's the point of speculation. And so we do what we can with the inputs that we have now. I think, given that and maybe this is me being heavy handed, I think given that we've identified that a change is probably necessary here, that continuing down the consulting path is something that you'll need to transition out of eventually. Whether or not that needs to happen now is totally up in the air. But you have these opportunities. You're able to explore. You could bounce back from them probably afterward. I mean, we could talk about that. What happens if it does fail 6 to 12 months and you're building a client base? Is that drastically different from right now? Would you feel worse than you do now about it? If, you were to, sorry, this is really grim. If you were to, I don't know, be on your deathbed in a week, and would you think, maybe a year from now, would you think, wow, I really regret not taking that opportunity? Or is this just something where you think, well, it was work and all work is kind of the same? These are all inputs that I would just kind of put onto your radar and see how you think about it. So I know I've been talking for a while. What are your general thoughts?
Um, like regarding like you said, the red flag of, you know, constantly working all the time and, uh, the those kind of overworking and insecurities of job futures and all that kind of plays into, while I was having that interview with this company, one of their questions was, looking at your resume, you've been doing consulting for 12 years. What's kind of motivating you to make this transition? And one of the things that I told them was, you know, I'm looking at this point in my life, I'm looking for, security in the job that I have, that, I'm able to, wake up in the morning and know that, hey, this is the work that I'm going to do, and, you know, pretty much have faith in that, as long as I keep doing what I need to do, there's going to still be work there. And in addition to that, just trying to kind of get some more control over my life rather than, I guess you could say, consulting sometimes feels like a fight for survival. You're not really living, you're just trying to make sure that you're always able to, plan for the future and make sure that everything you need to do is there whenever the time comes that, you can weather any storm. So in general, that kind of security is what I'm looking for. And additionally, the people aspect too, of having colleagues that I work with. And so even though I said earlier that I probably want to choose a full-time job working for kind of a standard position, it might ultimately be a good choice for me just to have some control over kind of my structure in my life.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I was just typing out the same thing, that another sort of a fourth route here is getting a job that isn't perfect, recognizing it's not perfect, but not waking up in this fight or flight mode every day. And also having, I mean, it's not just job security. You talked about a lot of things. You talked about technical growth, you talked about working with people. There's also, this is also probably going to sound cheesy, a sense of belonging, I think. And when you're working with a team of people, you can get into this routine. You can have some boundaries between your work and your life that I think don't currently exist. So I think from what you've stated so far, ideal situation, this sort of regular job calls you back. They say, yep, we want you. You go forward with them. Sounds like there aren't really too many problems. You can explore what that life looks like. If that doesn't happen, is where I think the interesting conversation comes in, which is, do you take this management role, or do you start to seek out something that, like I said, isn't totally perfect, maybe not the best fit, but still is something that isn't consulting? And so I don't know. I think you have an interesting opportunity. This person clearly respects you. They've talked about going in with partnership with you. How exciting is this prospect from a work perspective, not from a I have to manage people, but just if you were like, I'm the developer on this and I can scale to 10x just by snapping my fingers.
Uh, I mean, it does feel good. I mean, it's a lot of the times that whenever I've done work with, various companies, it feels very contractual,
Yeah.
you know, pretty much as a contract worker, I guess, would feel. And working with this individual, I do feel it feels like this weird blend where it's even though I'm a contract worker, it feels more like an employee boss or partnership type of method. So it kind of does feel like that. And being able to hear feedback from them and basically being told that, hey, you know, compliment on this, compliment how you did that, or, all those things does feel good because most of the time I don't hear that. It's kind of good. You delivered, you know, what was promised. So having that does feel good. And I guess that's another additional reason why, a regular full-time job would also be, a good possibility too, because that's kind of more commonplace there, or it should be at least.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And there's so much of human nature I feel like we touch on in these conversations. The need for validation is certainly there, and how we get it comes out in different ways. A contract worker, turning in your work and saying, cool, you delivered on the contract is like the most neutral form of validation you could possibly get. It's like, I'm not upset with this, but it's not, hey, you were a great person. It was wonderful working with you. Here's something we could do in the future together. This person, at least that you're talking about, you could potentially partner with, is expressing what's real validation. Like, hey, I want to work with you. I want you on this team. I think I think when it's like you've had a taste of this and now you're like, oh man, what the wool is pulled over my eyes. I've been doing consulting for so long. I've been in this bubble. And like you said, I'm starting to lose some of that tunnel vision. And I hope I don't sound judgmental by saying any of that in the way that I said it, but this is what I think is pointing to all of this change. And so I kind of see this path as, wait for this job to get back to you. Do you know when that'll happen, by the way?
I do not know. Potentially, I know that potentially at the earliest I would hear something would be next week. The hiring manager has been out of town, so uh, basically got to wait for him to come in back in. And I don't know how many other individuals they're also interviewing, so I don't know what that full timeline would look like. But I'd imagine uh, so not this week, so maybe 2 to 3 weeks from now, we'll probably hear an answer back.
Okay, so probably by the end of the month, at maybe the latest, we could say. And let's say you don't hear back or whatever, something kind of fizzles out. So then you'd be in this position of, well, now you actually really have a choice to make. And I think either way, you have a choice to make, because you can always find a path through this that is not as cut and dry as what other people might do. I'm not necessarily saying be overemployed, but I'm saying you could always talk about, hey, I really like this opportunity. Could I try part time while also seeking out the other one? I don't even recommend that. I still want to explore that possibility though of if they say no. So the management part of this job seems like it could be a little bit scary. Uh, and so if this person had told you, "Hey, I want to be a partner with you, and I'll form the team, and I'll find a manager as part of that team," would that make the job more appealing to you?
Would you mind repeating that one more time? What
Yeah.
would they deliver?
If they said that they would find a manager who isn't you, but you'll still work on this team, you'll still be valued, you can still contribute, would that be appealing to you?
Yeah, yeah. it's kind of weird because thinking about it, it almost feels like you offered me something and then now you're taking it away, and now I want the thing that you just took away,
Yeah.
type of thing. So, uh, like my initial reaction to that was, well, yeah, I'd be fine with that as long as I could have a more important say as to what happened. So basically, still wanting the management type of position in a sense. So I guess if there could be a weird kind of structure where that would be the case, that'd be fine. But otherwise, I think I'd rather be the manager than in that position.
Okay, I see. And I know this is a strange hypothetical because it's not like this person is probably going to say that. And if you were to ask, yeah, maybe they could figure something out. But I wanted to figure out what's important to you. And what's important to you in this case is being, slightly elevated from just a leaf level employee on this project. And so, does that bother you at all about the full time job then that you talked about, the regular job that would be?
So, uh, from the talking that I've done regarding that is I don't know what kind of management style you would call it,
Yeah,
but pretty much this team kind of are all on an equal footing.
yeah,
Nobody's really above or below each other. And so, I mean, that does seem nice that pretty much everybody has a value to say. And uh, I definitely could work in that regard. And I don't have an issue with having somebody above me,
hmm,
where I have no control. But I guess also I don't want to be the lowest man on the totem pole either.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't look at this as unilateral exercising of power or authority, essentially. If you have a manager, it's rarely going to be that they're always telling you, look, I'm just putting my foot down here. A lot of the times it's a conversation or it's at least a way of finding how can we make this work. So I think even if you ended up in that scenario, it might not be the worst. Um, okay, so now I want to explore more of this opportunity with the partnership. Suppose you partner, suppose you become a manager. You said this could fail 6 to 12 months from now. Let's just look at 6 months from now. How do you determine for your success for yourself if this was a success?
I guess for myself would be kind of it'd be I feel like it wouldn't be hard to determine a if the product's a success or not. Basically, it's one of those projects that you can just look at the numbers, look at the
Yeah.
engagement and all that to know if it was a success or not, or if it's able to continue, if it's salvageable to improve and um, twist to whatever does work better, or if it's just a flat out failure. But I think for me, my personal judgment of success would just be, uh, I guess, whatever the reception from the general public would be, and it's not that I do feel like it'd be one of those scenarios that either this takes off and people love it, or it doesn't take off. I don't really foresee it being one of those things where people are going to have a this is just straight up bad of a product. I
Yeah.
don't see that as being a possibility. So I think as long as, even if there's just a handful of people that end up using it and loved it, it won't be a major success, but I would still think it would be a success, in my opinion.
Okay, that's definitely good. What I was getting at more was along the lines of how do you, let's say it is a success, the product is a success. How do you determine that you're happy with this position though, 6 months from now? Like, how do you think things will have changed? Is it just a gut feeling you wake up and you think, wow, like I'm going to go to work at 9, I'm going to end at 5, and I'm going to go want to walk or I'm going to go whatever, bird watching. Like, how do you determine that it worked out, that this was a good career move essentially?
I would say that. ultimately, if, I can just feel that general sense of peace
Yeah.
inside, and feel that, ultimately that, going back to what I mentioned before, a lot of times things feel just like a fight for survival, you know, and I know that sounds drastic, but in your head, you often exaggerate things. And I think as long as I could feel that, at peace and that there is structure and order in my life, that would be successful. That things are, I'm not having to worry so much and there's less stress and, all those things to just going back, feeling at peace.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. Okay. I think that, and I'm not trying to end this session, but I think you have a lot of food for thought here of what's important to you. And what's come out to me as being important to you is one, working with people. I think that's probably close to the top of the list. Two is work life balance, having something that isn't just work, not feeling like work is consuming you and always hanging over you. Because it sounds like all of those things are the case right now. And then beyond that, I mean, maybe there are other things that you didn't mention, but it could be things like the money you make or the people you end up meeting or the kinds of opportunities this opens up. Those could all be great too. But at least those big ones, I think, are things that should steer you in the next 6 to 12 months. And you have this opportunity. You seem to like this person. They seem to like you. I think that could be good. I think if I were being extra cynical here, I would say because you don't get validation in the way that this person gave it to you on a regular basis with your job, that maybe that's steering you more toward, yeah, I like this person too, and this does sound like a good idea, and maybe not. Totally don't know. I've only heard what I've heard in the last 50 minutes or so. So I think it's worth considering this and seeing what it looks like. However, I would advise that if you go that route, you probably plan to transition out of your other consulting jobs. And in that case, that means figuring out a way for this main one to be monetarily viable. And if that means saying, look, I need a salary, even though we don't have the product yet, I don't know. Those would be part of your bargaining terms essentially to figure out if this could work for you. Because I think, given what you said, that the current viability of your career is probably going to be harder and harder to justify just with how you're reacting to it. So, um, what do you think about that? Does that sound like something? Is that an accurate representation? Do you think, do you have more clarity on what you want to do? Is there anything else you want to discuss or?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say that with this, like you mentioned, like needing a salary type of thing, uh, I basically already have that,
Okay.
it's uh, in a sense from him. So I mean, it's uh, I'm past the point where I could do a startup without being paid
Oh
along the
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, it's overall with this, I mean, I do appreciate you having this session with me. I mean, there's a lot of things that either kind of become more clear whenever you're talking to somebody else about them, and then hearing additional things that I didn't even think about to consider. So I do find this session beneficial, and I appreciate your time on that. And obviously there's still things to consider, but I feel that at least I have more direction in that process of working through things and kind of formulate that path to go on from here.
Yeah,
So
well, and
thank you.
so I don't think I actually mentioned this. You said over Discord the part about not sharing names. I'm still not going to share names, but you said someone might look at this and see it as this person isn't confident being a leader. How does this reflect on them? I didn't want to say this over text. I didn't want to sound preachy, but I look at it as the opposite way of this person is concerned about becoming a leader and wants to find out how they could do better or how they could address that. There are so many people who just go through life and just they just take what's given to them. They don't explore
Yeah.
different opportunities. So, props to you for doing this. The other thing I was going to say is one, good luck for sure that this regular job just works out and your decision is clear. But two, if it doesn't, you have now done this. There have been people watching live. There are people that we talk to on Discord all the time. They can also chime in with what they want to say. They can also provide words of validation and encouragement. I think you're not in this alone. We're rooting for you over here. At least I am. And yeah, I think it's good to take your life in your own hands. And that's essentially what you're doing by doing this. You're saying, I'm not perfectly happy with what's going on. Totally fine to explore some other opportunities here. So I hope it works out for you. Yeah. Any other kind of thoughts before we kind of wrap up here?
I was just going to say that I kind of smirked whenever you started saying that because after I wrote that message to you, in my head, I just knew he's going to come back and say, yeah, well, it also shows that you're trying to grow and improve, so it's almost like I saw this coming. And um, I guess, I guess that's a good alternative perspective, even though I do think that perspective.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of feel, cynical in the sense that, you know, I expect people to choose the worst path rather than the best path. So that was kind of my thinking on that. But it's good to also be told the positive side from that. So other than that, I mean, I can't think of anything else. And once again, appreciate everybody here, and um, I know where to find you guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Casey. I've said this to every mentee who's been on the stream, but it takes a lot of bravery to be here. I enjoyed the session. I hope you get something from it. And yeah, we'll follow up and find out how things are going, a month from now or so.
All right. Thank
All right,
you.
cool. All right. See you later. Bye, Casey.
Bye.
Okay. Great job, Casey. Let me show Twitch chat on stream. I want claps in chat. Clap, clap, clap. Copy paste them if you don't have them.